Christmas time for kids can be one of the most anxiety-inducing times of the year. And here's why. Because if we are in this space of the mind, the ego, the personality, the form, structure space, if we're saying to them constantly, you have to be good or Santa won't come, then that's just injecting fear into them in that moment, over and over and over and over again. If the other Santa comes up, like especially, or if you've got elves that are watching them, like all of that stuff, like someone's watching you, you better behave in this certain way or you won't get the present that you really, really want. All of that stuff is basically just inducing fear into them, which breeds anxiety. And as conscious parents, as human beings who want to connect on a soul level space and not come from that space of the mind and trying to control a child and trying to recognize that all behavior is emotions and the good naughty thing just isn't a thing with kids, it becomes a lot easier to recognize, like, okay, so this is what we do. We've got the elves and we've got them for fun, and that's it. Because a lot of people will be like, okay, well, do I even do Santa at all, or do I even do that at all? It's very much like this either or thing. And it doesn't have to be like that. It's like you get to decide some other option that, like, you feel like might not just be like waving around at you and from like a societal perspective, and that's because it's of the mind, the ego, the personality. And we've all been brought up to believe that we are the mind and we are the thoughts and we are the patterns and we are the conditions, and we're not, we're the soul inside. So, and that's where children operate from, like pure soul. When they're born as a baby, a newborn baby, their brain and their ego isn't even formed yet because there's no programming in there. So it's just pure soul, it's pure light. When we operate from that space and in our owning or knowing ourselves, then that's when we connect with them on that level. There's no need for Santa comes. There's no need for, if you're good, then you get this, because it's simply not a thing. So you scrap the Santa comes, you get rid of it, you don't tell your child that someone's watching them, or like put fear into them in that way, because you just don't need to. You don't feel like you want to do that. We do the elves and we do them for fun only. They're not elves that they're not allowed to touch, because they are allowed to touch them. They're allowed to cuddle them, they're allowed to do whatever they want with them, play with them, whatever. It's not that they come out and like they're not allowed to be touched or anything like that. It's not that they come out and they're reporting back to Santa. Like all these things on your phone where you can phone up Santa and stuff like that, there's none of that. We don't need that. The whole thing of, so like we do the elves still. It's not like, oh, we don't want to go down that narrative of having the good bad thing or blah blah blah, or watching you space, so we're not doing elves at all. And if you decide that, that's fine. Like, I'm not saying that's bad, that's just what that is. Here's how we do it. It's kind of like, okay, this is what the elves are made for. This is how we're going to use them in our family, because this is what works for us. And this is what feels right for us. And this is how it moves into that soul's vibrational space of where children reside and where they operate from. And that's just fun. And the elves are just there for fun. That's it. And they get up to all sorts in the night. Sometimes they will have a rest one night because mummy might fall asleep with the kids and forget. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. Parenting can be a tiring job. So that's what we do with our elves. And the whole like Santa thing, a lot of people like are like, I don't know if I want to do that because it's lying to my kids. I don't know if I want to do that because I don't want to get involved in like the good bad thing. So I just like let my kids decide what they want to believe. So my eldest like asked me when he was like, I don't know, 6 or so, about Santa, and I said, everyone gets to believe whatever they want to believe. Some people believe in Santa and some people don't. What would you like to believe? And he said, I want to believe in Santa. And that was it. That was it. So he wants to believe. So we're doing it. It's sometimes like that easy. You don't have to sit there and figure it all out because you're not ever going to figure out what the soul knows in any kind of situation. And the soul knows like what it is between you and your child, like that connection, and what's going to give you both the experience that is meant for you in this lifetime. So we do Santa. We do Santa. But we don't do the whole, if you behave like this, Santa won't come, or I'm telling Santa, or I'm reporting back to Santa, or like any of that kind of stuff is just not a thing, because it's not a thing in our daily life anyway. There's no like there's no rewards and punishments involved in our daily life. So there's no like reward charts if you behave this way, there's no punishments if you behave that way, because you look and you see the behavior, but you don't see the behavior, you see the emotion behind the behavior. And you see that that emotion is simply coming from the mind and the ego space and the thought patterns and whatever it is that they're thinking in that moment. And it does not mean, again, like, so it's like, here's where the mind will go to. It's like, well, if you're not punishing them, then what? How will they learn? How will they become good people? It's not that you can't have a conversation about something. It's not that you can't discuss something. But there's no kind of like shaming involved. There's no kind of like you're bad, and you need to do this, and if you don't do that, then you're still bad. And there's no forced apologies. There's no like that kind of thing. There's no like dragging it out, grinding them for a week. And trust me, I have done all this with my first child, which is my brother that I brought up. I've done like the both side things, and it's neither of those. Like, and like the both side things would be where you have the punishments and the rewards, and it's kind of like that control space, like you've got to try and control them. The other side of that, within the mind and the opposites, duality, structure, space, rules, form, blah blah blah, is permissiveness. So it's kind of like, okay, you kind of just like let them choose everything. I've never really gone into that like space, like full on much, to be honest. It was maybe for like a little time. The space that is soul aligned is neither of those things. It's neither of those things. So it's not like if they display certain behaviour that is, say like they hit another child or something like that. It's not that you punish them for it, but it's not that you like don't do anything about it either. You don't just let them run around doing whatever they like and hurting people. It's like, it's not either of those things. This is different. It's something else. It's a shift in like how you view the world and your experience of the world, and you come into that soul space and you then operate from the present moment only, and that's where children operate from, so you're on their same level. And so often like you will just know before something happens that's going to happen. if a child comes too close to them and you know that they're prone to kicking or hitting out if they're in their personal space and they don't yet know and they're too young to recognize, this is my personal space, please give me some space, and they can't verbalize that, you just kind of stay really close, and like if that child is close, you just kind of move your child towards you, or like something like that. So you don't have to say anything, you just do it. You just know that that might happen in that moment, or you can feel their legs going out, or you can feel like they're about to push away, or like get out of my space kind of thing. Because you are so in tune and so aligned and connected in that vibration and that energy of where your child is. And that's what all this is, it's just energy. So moving out of that space and into that soul aligned space, you then get to like, you don't need any of that stuff that's like fear inducing in the Christmas period, because it's also just going to cause you more stress. It's going to cause you more stress. You're going to end up in this cycle of constantly like reporting back to Santa, and you almost like give your power away in that moment to some other person, form, being, like whatever it is, magical man. You give your power away in that moment to something else, when actually you can handle this moment. You can do it in a way that isn't destructive of your connection. So you don't need to use that kind of method that like someone has made that up at some point and everyone's just going along with it. You don't need to use that method and like with your children in the run up to Christmas of if you're good or if you're bad and Santa will or won't come or whatever. You don't need to do that. You get to choose if you want to do Santa or not. And maybe like it has to kind of be like a both thing. Like what our children do is they mirror to us and show us our own beliefs and our own thought patterns in every single moment, over and over and over and over and over again. And that's why the ego becomes so triggered. It's not you that's getting triggered, you're the soul. Like we have a mind and we have a body, but we're the soul inside. You're the soul. You're not giving a fuck. Like either way, there's no preference. The ego is triggered in those moments to like seeing, okay, this is what I want to do about the Santa situation, and this is what I want to happen, and this is what the outcome I want, and this is what I want to say, and this is how I want you to be, and this is how I'm trying to mold you, and blah 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 blah. And when you like just begin to soul align and come into that space of a deep connection with your child and where they operate from, you just start to notice that you are the observer and noticing all this stuff going on, and then you just shut the fuck up and don't say any of it. And then at some point it just goes away. It's just not there anymore, and it's not even a thought to say something like, if you don't do what I say, then I'm going to tell Santa and he won't bring you your presents you don't want. It's not even a thought to say that anymore, because you've shifted in your consciousness like into a different space of being, and you're no longer operating from that mind space. And this is like what happens when you start to soul align. It will come up and 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 come up, and it's just noticing it over and over and over and over and over again, and then come back into the present moment over and over and over and over again into the soul space where your child is. And then at some point it just like fizzes and melts away, and it's not even there anymore. It's not even a thought that will come in, and it's not like, oh, I'm having that thought and bad, because that's the mind coming in through the back door and like fighting with itself. It's not that either. It's just like noticing it and recognizing it, and then coming back into the present moment, and that's it. So that is how effectively, like if we all did that, if we all did this, then there wouldn't be the fear that is like so present at Christmas time throughout that whole month, just kind of like being pressed into children, and then like the pressure on us as well, and like there just wouldn't be any of that. And that is something that I feel like would really help children, because they wouldn't have this expectation on them to behave a certain way, and the way that you're expecting them to behave is completely tailored to your ego as well. So if you want them, if you say to them like you have to be good, they really have no idea what that means. So it's only your mind that knows what that means and what prescription and what form that's in. It's like you have to behave like this in this time frame period and this way, and like this is exactly how I want you to do it. But you're not saying that to them. You're not explaining to them like simple steps of like, this is how I want you to be. You're just saying you have to be good, and that's such a broad expression. They just don't understand or even know what that means. And I'm not saying they don't know what that means because they're bad inherently, because they're not. They're pure, they're soul, they're good. That's it. It's just pure unconditional love. That's what it is. But they don't know what your version of good means, or your ego's version of good means. It's not even you, it's just the ego mind. They don't know what that means. And that's why so often then it doesn't work out for your ego, because they don't know what that means. And they'll just carry on doing whatever it is they're doing in the present moment. And then the ego of yours is triggered to fuck and wondering why they're not listening and why they're not behaving in the way that you want them to. And often it's just because they don't even know like what that term means, because it's your version, it's your ego's version, your mind's version. So that's why moving out of your mind and into the soul aligned space is like paramount to connecting with your child in a way that like 99% of the population don't. And that's, again, not a judgment. It's like just the way that things have gone like over the last hundreds of years, and we're now in the space of so many kids with anxiety and depression and suicide rates and like all that stuff. And it's because of how we're parenting majority of the time, how adults view children, how adults behave with children, how they are with children. And it's just like this remembering that I am not the mind, I am the soul. Children don't have all of that conditioning that we have. And so it's nothing really to do with them, it's all to do with us. But it's everything to do with them at the same time, and that's the whole paradox within like this whole thing. It's got nothing to do with them, but it's got everything to do with them. But in order for it to have everything to do with them, and for them to like grow and be this well-balanced human being that we all want our babies to be, it has to have nothing to do with them and everything to do with us. And it's the internal space that we need to look at. It's not external. The mind loves to externalize things. It has to have like, it's like past, future. It's never present. It can't understand presence. It doesn't know like things what that the soul knows. It's like you can know something without knowing why you know it. You just know. But the mind will never understand that. It will always look for an answer. It will always look for a reason. It will always have to have some kind of label or condition or some kind of something put on it. And I'm not saying that's bad, but that's just what that is. The mind is an amazing tool for all sorts of wonderful things when you need it. When you don't need it, put it back in the toolbox and just operate from your own presence, and that's it. And 100% of the time, because children only operate from soul, that's where you have to be when you're in like physical connecting space with them. Being, that's it. Okay, Speak to you later. Bye.